On August 7th, 1974, something very special happened that has the potential to help you understand how to be saved. So sit back, relax, because I have a story to tell you and some words of wisdom to share. What exactly happened on that day? Well, this happened. A man doing a tightrope walk, but not just any tightrope walk. This is a tightrope walk between the World Trade Center, which at the time were the tallest buildings in the world. Let me tell you how this happened. The gentleman on this wire is a man named Philippe Petit. According to Wikipedia, he's a French high-wire artist who gained fame for his unauthorized high-wire walks between the towers of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris in 1971 and of Sydney Harbor Bridge in 1973. And as I already told you, he also tightrope walked between the World Trade Centers. This is how it happened. While in a dentist's office in France, Philippe was looking through a magazine when he saw a picture of the World Trade Centers being built in New York City. And while he was looking at it, something snapped in his mind. And he became obsessed with the idea of tightrope walking between these two towers. He tore out the page out of the magazine that he was looking at and runs out of the dentist's office. And over the course of time, he enlisted his friend and his girlfriend to help him fulfill his obsession to tightrope walk between the World Trade Center. And it was only a matter of time before they ended up in New York City, where they got more people to join in and started laying the plans for how they were going to pull this off. Now don't worry, I'm going to get to the spiritual lesson very soon, but you need to hear this so that everything will make sense. They planned for months, flying back and forth between Paris and New York by pretending to be tourists, pretending to be architects, while they scoped out the building and developed their plans. How were they going to sneak the necessary equipment into the building with all of the security? How were they going to get a thick metal wire secured between the World Trade Center? They decided in the early stages of planning that they would shoot an arrow with a rope across to the other side and pull the wire across. And when daylight came, he would walk out on that wire and perform his tightrope walk. The day finally came. They snuck into the building and hid and waited for security to leave. And then they began the work of getting the wire across between the two buildings. They worked throughout the night until everything was perfect. And on August 7th, 1974, shortly after 7 a.m., Eastern Standard Time, of course, Philippe did it. He stepped out onto that tightrope and started performing at an eye-watering 1,350 feet above the ground. For 45 breathtaking minutes, he walked on the wire. He danced on the wire. He even laid down on the wire, kneeled on the wire as he waved to spectators below. No safety rope, no room for error, just him, the wire, and his balancing rod. These were real pictures from a real man on a wire between the World Trade Center. The police came and tried to get him to leave. They tried to coerce him. They tried to threaten him to get him to come off that wire. But as long as he stayed on that wire, their words meant nothing. They were just words. They had no power over him. They couldn't touch him. I want you to keep that in mind. In order to live a successful Christian life, we too will have to walk on a wire, suspended above the world. And on that wire, it is essential that a delicate balance be maintained. And that balance is the balance between faith and works. It's the balance between giving all your energy to serve God while simultaneously realizing that you are doing nothing at all. Now, this may sound like a contradiction, but this is exactly what the Bible teaches. On one hand, it says in Ephesians 2 that by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. And yet, in James chapter 2, it says, a man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show thee my faith by my works. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 12, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. And yet, in the same chapter, Jesus also says something that looks contradictory when he says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So, which is it? Do we have to carry out violent spiritual effort in order to take the kingdom? Or do we have to just rest calmly in Jesus? Is it our works or our faith? The answer is simple. To be a Christian on a wire means we have a faith walk that requires that we live above the world. It requires a delicate balance that can only be achieved by our full effort while realizing that much like Christ, I can of mine own self do nothing. While Christ was on earth, he lived a life of complete dependence on the Father. He lived a life of perfect balance where men could see his good works, and yet he chose to live in submission to God, knowing that the only way for a man to live the Christian life is through the power of the Holy Spirit. And so Christ lived out the balance of faith and works. This balance is necessary for each and every one of us that desires to be a part of God's kingdom. Much like Philippe on that wire, if we do not maintain perfect balance and lean too far to the left, there is a perilous world of once saved, always saved theology waiting for us, thinking that we can continue to live a willingly sinful life without the risk of eternal loss. And if we lean too far to the right, then there is an equally treacherous fall into the world of a pharisaical mindset, and that we are better than all those sinners over there. The Apostle Paul understood this delicate balance and made it clear in Philippians chapter 2, when he said, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." So Paul acknowledges that there is a work for us to do, and that we need to take it seriously. But he does not stop there. In verse 13, he finishes his thought that will allow us to maintain the perfect balance when he says, "For it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure." And there it is, just like Philippe on that wire, just how Jesus lived. There's the balance that will allow you to stay on that wire, suspended above the world, suspended above pride, suspended above lust, suspended above that unforgiveness, the gossiping, the grudges, the wrong entertainment. Whatever it is, that's our thing. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's effort. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. That's faith. Testimonies to the Church, Volume 4, page 548, puts it this way: prayer and effort and prayer will be the business of your life. You must pray as though the efficiency and praise were due to God, and labor as though duty were all your own. There it is again, the perfect balance of a Christian on a wire. Take a look at this picture. It depicts the narrow way that every follower of Christ must follow. If you fall to the left, there will be a fall into the chasm of workless faith. And if you fall to the right, there is also a chasm of faithless works. Both are dangerous, and both will lead to eternal loss. I also want you to realize that much like the police officers that tried to get Philippe to get off that wire with their threats, Satan is trying his best to entice, coax, and threaten you to get off the narrow path. But here's the thing. I want you to realize that those police officers couldn't do anything to get Philippe to come off that wire until he was good and ready. And with all of his threats and temptations, the devil cannot get you off the narrow path of Christianity unless you choose to step off. We have to become just as obsessed with the kingdom of heaven as Philippe was in his pursuit to tightrope walk between the World Trade Center. We have to stay focused, keep our eyes on Jesus. We have to fight and work to take the kingdom of heaven. But remember, you're not doing anything at all, because it is Christ that works in you, giving you the desire and the power to have the faith and works that will enable you to serve him. If you've been blessed by this video, let us know what you think in the comments section below, and don't forget to share it with someone else. And always remember, don't come off the wire. God bless.